Welcome to this video. Today we are going to see the network layer, which is the third layer from the bottom of the OSI reference model having 7 layers. As you can see here, this is the last layer from the bottom, which is hop to hop. Above, right from transport, session, presentation and application, they are said to be end to end. So the meaning of that we already seen. Here the process or the network layer process in the sending machine will communicate with the network layer processes or process in the routers or the immediate router that will communicate with the next router and so on. That's why it is said to be the hop to hop communication. So one more thing to ponder here is that the data unit which is transmitted in the network layer is packet. Previously it was used to be frame, or in the case of data link layer that was frame. In the case of physical layer, these were the individual bits which can be identified, processed. Here the granularity is packet, means individual packets will be processed. So first we'll see the network layer design issues. When that network layer was being designed, what were the design issues? So we'll see the important point which is called as store and forward packet switching. Then we'll see the services which are provided by the network layer to the next layer, which is transport layer. We'll see the implementation of two important categories of services. One is connectionless service and one is connection oriented service. These are basically two important services which are provided by the network layer to the transport layer. At the end, we'll have a comparison of the datagram subnet and the virtual circuit. So to begin with the design issues, we need to know that the network layer basically provides point-to-point connectivity between any two hosts. So one host is directly connected to some other host and so on. Now to provide these network layer services, the goals are as follows. Now there may be different routers present in the communication channel. So whatever may be the type of router technology, the services should be intact. Services should not be impacted with the change in the router technology. So services should be independent of the router technology. The next is the transport layer should be shielded. That transport layer should not know what is the number, type and topology of the routers present. How many routers are there? What are the types? In what way they are situated? What is the topology we can say? That is not, that is not required to be, considered by, known by the transport layer. That should be shielded from that information. The next is the network addresses made available to the transport layer should use a uniform numbering plan. Now what exactly network addresses are? Roughly, network addresses are the numerical addresses which identify each individual node in the network or any resource, you can say. Basically the routers at this level, roughly speaking. So there may be different LANs or WANs. These numbering systems should be uniformly identifying in a unique way. They should be identifying the different routers. Essentially, the network layer defines the service provided by the subnet. What different services the subnet will provide? Now, what is subnet? Now, if you think of subnet in this diagram, so basically this is one, just to elaborate what this diagram depicts. This is a carrier's equipment. That means the ISP's routers along with the transmission lines that they uh, uh, connect through. These are the transmission lines. Now, this is what is called as the carrier's equipment. What is shown to be the shaded portion or the gray oval shape. Apart from that, there are the customer's equipment. We can say there is one host, probably in a home environment, which is connected to the router A using a DSL modem, you can say. There is one more host which is basically connected to a LAN. That appears to be one office environment. There are multiple hosts connected to each other through a LAN, one of which is said to be the router of that in the private LAN that is connected to the ISP's network. Router E it is connected to. So this router is the proprietary or you can say is a private router of that particular office environment, whereas this and through this F one host H2 is connected to the internet. Whereas in this scenario, the home machine H1 is connected to the ISP's subnet directly to the router A using the DSL connection. Now we were actually seeing what is subnet. Now this is a part which can be categorically identified separately. So this is a carrier's equipment. This particular network is also there, which is that office LAN. So that is also a subnet, we can say. To reiterate, this is that subnet, which is a short for subnetwork. Subnetwork. It's a part of an organization network which can be separately identified. So store and forward packet switching, that is the point we are going to see first. Now whenever H1 has to send data to H2, the data may be somewhat bigger than a single packet can hold, and that's why the data has to be split into different packets. Essentially what exactly happens is that the process P1 which generates a message which is to be sent to process P2 on H2, that process P1 will send that message to the transport layer on H1. That transport layer will be basically acting in the operating system of H1 machine. Now the transport layer will add its own header and then send it onto that message will be sent to the network layer as the hierarchy is known to you. So this is the transport layer that will send that message onto the network layer. Now here the network layer comes into picture, or that is where the ISP comes into picture. Now whenever that message is sent to from transport layer to the network layer, that may be the ISP's scope. Now the network layer will be dividing that message, if that cannot be held into a single packet, into multiple packets, so that all the message can be combined. I mean can be transported. After that, those packets which form a single message, they will be transported over these carriers equipment or that ISP subnetwork towards the destination machine H2. Now depending on various parameters, the path may be selected. That may be A, C, E, F, or that may be A, B, D, E, F. We'll see exactly how it happens. Now if the message was divided into 4 different packets, the first packet will originate from H1 and will be sent to the first router to which H1 is connected, that is A. A will try to accept the packet fully will have its own check whether the packet has been received fully without any problems. Once the whole packet is received, until that time it will be storing the part or storing that packet, and that's why the first part which is store. Once the packet is completely and received without any problems, that will be sent over to the destination machine through the ISP's network. Let that path be A, C, E, F and to H2. So A will now transfer that packet 1 to C. C will once again do the same thing. It will store that packet until it is completely received. All the checks will be performed on that packet. Once it is sure that the packet is completely received with intact, so that will be sent on to E, over to E. In this way, the packets will be transferred to eventually to E, then to F, and then to H2. The same thing happens with the rest of the packets. Packet number 2, packet number 3, they will be transferred. Eventually, the last packet will come and that will be transferred. So each individual router will first store the incoming packet and then will send it on to the next router towards the destination machine. That's why as the packet is first stored and then forwarded, this is what is called as store and forward packet switching. That is the name. That's why it is the name store and forward packet switching. So in this particular environment, the network layer protocols will operate. So this is the infrastructure that may be considered. Now, the functions of a network layer. The first and the foremost function is routing. Routing means to find one path from one host to another host. Once again, see the diagram. Here, when router A accepts that packet, the duty of router A is to ultimately it has to send that packet to H2. And to send that packet to H2, there are many ways possible. At least 2 ways can be seen here. There are more than that. So A can transfer that packet through C, E, F towards H2, or can also send that packet through B, D, E, F, so on up to H2. So A will identify which path is more optimum. That optimality principle we'll see next. But in terms of distance, in terms of what is called as the delay, or many other parameters are there, which depend or which will speak for the quality of the network. Ultimately, with minimum time and minimum problems, if the packet can be sent to H2 through C, the packet will be diverted to C. Otherwise, that will be diverted to B. That is what is called as routing. Routing ultimately is to find out the optimum path from one host to another host. Basically, the path will be the whole path, but depending on whether that connection is connection oriented or connection less, either the total path may be find out, or maybe only the next particular, so some routers may be identified. We'll see the details next. Next is congestion control. As we have seen, there are multiple problems in the network. So there may be lines which are physically cut. So even though the routers identify C to be one optimum path, like A, C, E, F, the lines from C to E might have been cut physically. so that the path from C to E is not present. This particular path, you can say directly. Maybe the line is not cut, but due to load at C, C cannot transmit the packets at the required rate. There may be many different problems present, and when the number of packets jam at C due to some of the problems, the capacity of C is exhausted, so that C cannot transfer the packets onto E. Maybe the line capacity is exhausted from A to C. For those or some of those reasons, there may be packets which cannot be transferred over that path, and the network is said to be having congestion. So to control that congestion, to minimize the effect of that congestion, mechanisms to prevent hosts from flooding the network is essential. Why congestion happens? Because ultimately there are some hosts which are pumping packets into the networks which cannot be handled, or they are pumping the packets into the networks at a rate which cannot be handled by that particular line, maybe that particular router, and in that case the packets will tend to be lost, and that's why that is said to be a congestion. The packets cannot be transmitted at the required rate. They tend to jam. Next is quality of service. We have seen there are multiple problems possible, and due to which transmission rates may degrade, error rates may increase, and there are ultimately many different parameters which can change. So these characteristics ultimately can be measured. If they are found to be deteriorating, they may be improved, and to some extent those parameters can be guaranteed in advance. For example, if a connection oriented service is used, we'll see that how it is done. The next important function is internetworking. So we have just seen that there are subnets. So what the one is this particular, only one particular subnet is shown here, or one network is shown here. Now it's not always that two machines are connected only using one network or one subnet. There may be multiple such subnets present, and each individual subnet may be having different router technology, different router topology, different number of routers, and many different things, and many different heterogeneous technological aspects. Maybe sometimes wired technology is used, sometimes in some network wireless technology is used to connect routers. So there are different aspects. So if there are multiple networks being used which are having different physical parameters, the translation between these subnets is important, and that is being done by the network layer. That is what is called as internetworking. Networking of multiple heterogeneous networks. So of the services provided to the transport layer, two different technologies or two different services are very important. We have seen that one is connectionless, which is used by internet community, and one is connection oriented, which is largely used by the telephone companies. Now it is up to the the network layer. It can choose among any of these services. As we've just seen, the subnet is inherently unreliable. Routers can fail, the transmission lines may be cut, their capacity may be exhausted, there may be some attacks or whatever. The subnet is inherently unreliable. We cannot guarantee. Now that's why in the case of connectionless, the host should accept this fact, and to improve the quality or to assure the quality, error control and flow control should be done by the host themselves. In the case of connection oriented service, which is used by telephone companies, quality of service may be guaranteed to a greater extent, because we'll see the parameters, which different parameters change and why it is possible. Now QoS is very important, quality of service is important. And now in the internet community as well, they are trying to associate themselves with the connection oriented service. Previously they used to have connection, the preference to connectionless service. Now due to the QoS, they are tending to use the connection oriented service. Now how exactly the connection oriented service makes the difference into quality? We'll see the difference between these two. In the case of connectionless service, when two hosts want to communicate with each other, no such advanced setup is needed. The sender directly starts sending the packets. Now that requires that the packets need to have the information like who is the sender, who is the receiver. That means the sender's address, receiver's address are required to be contained into the packets. The packets are frequently called as datagrams in this scenario, and the subnet is called as datagram subnet. Here routing algorithm will manage independent tables at each individual router, based on which the routing decision can be made. We'll see one example afterwards. Routers have routing tables which basically contain information like which is the closest router to me. So based on that, routing decision can be made. Essence is that there is no advanced setup. For each individual packets will have the senders and receivers addresses. Routers will be having routing tables, and for individual packet, the routing decision will be done. That means for individual packet, it will be decided to whom, to which router, next router, this packet is to be sent. That is the difference. In the case of connection oriented service, whenever two or more routers wish to communicate with each other, they need to first establish what is called as the connection. That connection basically means, if you see in this diagram, that connection means right from H1 to H2, a particular path connecting multiple routers to the source and destination machines has to be first found out. That should be the optimum path, that may be the optimum path found out, and that is established, that is found out and remembered throughout the communication. A path from the source router to the destination router must be established before any data packets can be sent. So the path is known beforehand. This particular connection is now called a virtual circuit, and the subnet is called a virtual circuit subnet. Previously, in the case of datagram, the packets used to be called datagrams. Here the connection is called as the virtual circuit. The subnet in the case of datagram used to be called as datagram subnet. Here it is called as virtual circuit subnet in the connection oriented scenario. Now it may so happen that if the path is established, there may be the scenario we'll see next. So the incoming traffic may be from different routers or different hosts, you can say, to a particular router. A is accepting packets from H1, that some H3 is there, which is also sending packets to A at the same time. Now to differentiate between these two types of packet, the packets will be having the connection information. So H1 to H2 is one connection, VC, and H3 to H2 is a separate connection. They may be using the same path, but the connection is separate, and that's why these two different types of packets will be having the what is called as the connection identifiers, and these identifiers need to be replaced for different VCs, virtual circuits. We'll see with one example. Now this process is called as label switching, and the actual service which is used in the virtual circuit may be MPLS, multi-protocol label switching, that has got a particular bit length reserved for storing the connection identifiers. So we'll first see the implementation of the connectionless service. Now, in the similar to the previous diagram that you have seen, the host H1 is wishing to send data to H2 using the connectionless service. So now there'll be routing tables as we have previously seen for each individual routers A, B, C, D, E, etc. So we are now seeing here the A's table, the routing table for router A. The initial situation or the phase of that routing table is something like this. So the first column represents which next router is to be approached, and the second column represents the path or the router through which that particular router can be approached. Obviously for A is itself, and that's why no other router is required. Now for B, to approach B from A, B itself is the path. Similarly for C, C itself is the path. For D, A can approach D using B. So there is one more path from A, C, D, but A has already found out that it can reach D with maybe lesser distance or maybe some lesser time, you can say, through B, and that's why that routing table is so designed. To reach D, A needs to go through B. Similarly for E and F, A can take the path through C. That's why both are C. Now, the situation may be calculated for each individual packet, and depending on that time, some parameters may change. Now, the later part of the A's routing table is shown here. The parts or the entries up till this D are same, but something different happens with E and F. So E and F were previously contacted, or previously they were obtained through C. Now something has happened, and that's why E and F, that's something maybe the router C has itself failed, the communication line may have been cut, or there may be some congestion present, whatever may be. So that time C cannot be used to reach E and F. That's why here E and F will be reached through B and D, and that's why the values C and C are changed to B and B here. Essence is that in the first example, if there were 4 packets to be sent, first 3 packets may have been sent in the path A, C, E and F. So 1, 2 and 3, these are the packets which are sent using this path. But we need to know that even though this path is used, that path is calculated for each individual packet 1, 2 and 3. From 1 to 3, that same path was identified to be the optimum path, and that path was used. So A always approached C to reach E, eventually to F. But while the fourth packet was completely being received, something happened with this path, and that's why A decided not to go to C and to send the fourth packet. A send that packet over to the path A, B, D, E, F. That's why this fourth packet is said to be shown to be sent over the upper path. So the essence of connectionless service is that for every or each individual packet, the path is recalculated, and there is one overhead also for each individual packet there. So that we can see. So the implementation of connection oriented service in contrast with the previous connectionless service we'll now see. Here, before establishing or before starting the communication, we know that we need to establish, or the routers need to establish, the host needs to establish a particular virtual circuit, that is the connection oriented. That's why it is called as connection oriented. First the path is established. So maybe for H1 and H2, the path is established to be H1 A C E F next to H2. So here the routing tables are somewhat different. Here once the connection is established, that is identified with one identifier, the label is associated with that. Here the path may be identified to be 1, or the VC may be the identifier for VC may be selected to be 1. So the path from H1 to H2 is given the label 1. Similarly, there is one more host H3 which is trying to communicate with H2. That host may be using the same path H3 A C E F H2, but fundamentally that virtual circuit is now different because the total connection is different, and that's why that VC second virtual circuit may be given the identifier as 2. This is very essential as the same path is being used to send or to connect different virtual circuits. Accordingly, the routing tables are now placed in this particular way. So A's table is shown here. If a packet comes from H1 to A, it will with one identifier as 1. A has to send it to C with the identifier labeled as 1. This is the meaning, first entry. If on the other hand, A receives a packet from H3, the next host, with an identifier as 1, A cannot send that same packet to C with the same identifier back, because C may now confuse, or C may not be able to distinguish with whether the packet belongs to the first connection or the second connection. It will simply wrongly assume that the packet belongs to the first virtual circuit. As the packet belongs to the second virtual circuit from H3 to H2, as it is coming from H3, even though the incoming packet has got the identifier information as 1, the A will change that identifier to 2 while sending it to C. So that is the difference. This is what is called as the label switching. So previously we have seen what is called as multi-protocol label switching, MPLS. That is very essential here. The label has to be properly identified and properly put so that the next routers do not confuse, do not wrongly attach that to different virtual circuit which is unexpected. So this is what is called as label switching. Accordingly, C will be having its own routing table where any packet is coming from A with one identifier as 1 will be given to E with the same identifier as 1. If a packet is coming from A with the identifier as 2, it will be given to E with the identifier 2. Similarly, for each table, if a packet is coming from C with one identifier as 1, it will be forwarded to F with identifier as 1. If it is coming from C with the identifier as 2, it will be forwarded to F with the identifier 2. Here there is no confusion now because of the identifiers. They are different and each individual routers can identify from exact which source the packets are coming based on their identifiers. And when such a packet comes through to F and then it is handed over to H2, H2 can very well identify which is the original, the sender based on the identifier. And that's why even though the same path is being used, there is no problem for the H2, the receiver, to identify the exact source. This is how the connection oriented service is implemented. Here for every different packet, the path is not required to be calculated. It is once decided because it is decided whenever a packet is coming from H1, it is to be given to C. Now in the scenario when something happens with C, that whole path has to be discarded and a fresh new path has to be first calculated on which next packets will be delivered. So the comparison of virtual circuit and datagram subnets is due now. Now we will compare them with different issues, the datagram subnet and the virtual circuit subnet. As we have just seen, the circuit setup is not required for a datagram. It is because the path itself is not present. Whereas in the case of virtual circuit, it is essentially required first. So far as addressing is concerned, datagram subnet requires that each packet contains the full source and the destination address, as for every packet the path is to be calculated. Here the VC or the virtual circuit or the path is ready, known. That's why each packet simply contains only the VC number, the identifier that you have just seen. State information. Now routers do not hold state information about connections. In the case of datagram, there is no such notion of connection here, as you have just seen, and that's why they need not hold any such state information. But for a VC, as the each individual router needs to know where exactly the packet is coming from and where it is to be diverted to, whether the next routers are working or not, they are functioning or not. That's why each VC requires router table space per connection and having the identify information, and accordingly the resources like memory as required. Routing is required in datagram for each individual packet, as we have just seen, and in the case of VC, as the path is initially set up, all packets simply follow it. It is not required to be calculated for every packet. Now, what happens if a router fails? In the case of datagram, there is no such major impact. Only if the packets have already been sent to a particular router, and in the transit that maybe the router fails before the packets receive that particular router, these two packets, if the C fails before 4 and 3, the packet number 4 and 3 receive C, these will be lost eventually, and accordingly there will be no acknowledgement and the sender has to resend. There is no such bigger impact. But in the case of VC, if a router fails, the whole path has to be discarded. And that's why a new path has to be found out. The previous VC has to be terminated. New path has to be found out, and the remaining paths, the packets have to be retransmitted. Now, for two issues, quality of service and congestion control, these are difficult in the case of datagram subnet because there is no guarantee of which path is taken, which routers are taken, and that's why nothing is sure. That's why we simply cannot guarantee any quality. We cannot say whether congestion will be there or may not be there. But in the case of VC, there is initial overhead of establishing that virtual circuit, but once established, we know the complete path, we know the routers that will be there on that path, their properties, their load, etc. And that's why we can assure, we can very well we can assess, we can estimate in advance what could be the load, what could be the technology that we have to pass through, how many numbers of routers we have to pass through, what is the path, and what is the distance, and based on that we can at least guarantee some quality of the transmission. We can at least estimate whether there may be congestion or not. If enough resources, for example memory, can be associated with individual routers in the path, we cannot we can at least control congestion. So this is about the different design issues in the case of network layer. So thank you.